This is the Play Your Position podcast, where we huddle up, call the plays, and inspire you to run your ball into the end zone. Are you ready to score more game-winning touchdowns in your life, business, and career? Then listen up, because it's game time, baby. Now, here's your host, Mary Lou Kaiser.
Not long after my father was born, the nurses noticed he was turning blue. Turns out his trachea was blocked, a condition called tracheal stenosis. He was immediately taken to surgery to have the blockage removed, and for the first 2 years of his life, he had a silver tube in his neck to help him learn how to breathe. To this day, my dad will only wear open collared shirts. He hates turtlenecks and he hates neckties. Anything that triggers the feeling of choking or having his breath blocked causes him great anxiety. He carries the memory of something he can't logically remember. Like a cattle brand, it is seared into who he is. Like a lot of people these days, I think about the long-term effects the current pandemic is going to have on us as individuals, as communities, and countries. I think about how it is branding us at a deep, deep level. I am aware every single day that I am living through history, much like I was aware of that same thing on 9/11 as I sat on the end of my bed, watching the same newsreel loop images of the towers burning until I had to go to work, even though work turned out not to be work that day. As such, I've been thinking about trauma and the long-term effects trauma can have on me and the people I love. Do we learn to live with its effects the way my father has lived his life, a full and wonderful life, despite being dangerously close to never having a life at all? As a football fan, I tuned into the playoff games over the weekend, and if you are a sports fan, you know that there is baked-in trauma to every single game or match. You show up cheering for one side or the other. It's the nature of sport. One of the 4 teams I was cheering for won. So there were 8 teams, 4 playoff games, and one of the teams that I wanted to move on won, and that would have been the Buffalo Bills. All the other teams I was cheering for lost. When I don't have a horse in the race, or in this case, a team in the playoffs, I tend to cheer for the underdogs. Hence, I was cheering for the Cleveland Browns, the Los Angeles Rams, the Buffalo Bills, and the New Orleans Saints. Now, some people might argue that the Saints were not an underdog because Drew Brees up against Tom Brady of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is about as close to a great match of quarterbacks as you're going to get in the modern football era. However, their performance was subpar, and the Buccaneers ended up winning handedly. You know, there's been a lot of speculation about Drew Brees and the fact that he's 42 years old. Is he going to move on, retire? And that is certainly on the table. But as so many of us sports fans have witnessed over the years, not so fast. People like Drew Brees have a way of surprising us fans. If he has decided that he's not done yet, then he's not done yet. However, as I have learned all too well this year, sometimes we don't get to decide how things are going to go down. We don't get to decide the conditions in which we live because forces outside of us are making those decisions. Sometimes things happen beyond our immediate control, which then puts us in the position of having to make a decision. Now, going back to the story I opened with about my dad, he didn't have a choice at that point. Choices were made for him. Obviously, he was a newborn child, and nurses and his parents, my grandparents, were quick to make decisions. And of course, there was risk. There was no guarantee that he was going to survive surgery or even make it into surgery in time to remove the blockage and get him breathing. Again, I would not be here had he not been saved, had decisions outside of his control been set into motion. I have shared with you throughout my time here at the Player Position Podcast that I am committed to practicing active decision making, meaning I don't get swept up easily into the commotion happening on a large scale as I did when I was younger. I have developed the skills of thinking about what I'm thinking about, a concept called metacognition. Does having this skill make me immune to trauma? Does this skill make me immune to the forces that are happening outside of me? Not at all. I was bummed and mad when the Browns lost. I realize this is a trivial example, but work with me here. Once they lost, I was mad, and I removed myself from the media room and folded some laundry for a while as a way of calming down, as a way of refocusing my thoughts and moving past my disappointment. I don't like when the team I want to win loses. And the Browns aren't even my team. I have zero allegiance to them. But like I said earlier, I'm a sucker for cheering for the underdog. So there it is. This made me think about how right now you could say we are all underdogs in one way or another. We are up against a force that feels much greater than each of us. What I can control is what I think about. What feelings those thoughts generate are within my control. And then what I do as a result of those feelings, again, within my control. Do I like being restricted? No. Do I like the deep division between Americans that's growing deeper every day? Not at all. But I choose not to let those factors, those forces outside of my control, traumatize me to the point of not showing up for myself and the work I'm here to do. Part of my work is thinking about ideas, and the idea that drove today's episode comes from a book I read in college called The Things They Carried by a man named Tim O'Brien. Now, the book is a collection of short stories about different characters the author remembers from his time serving in the Vietnam War. The title refers to both literal and figurative things the men he served with carried with them during battle, and also once they returned from war and were reassimilating into civilian life in the States. It's a beautiful collection of stories. They are tender, they are poignant, they are heartbreaking. I was not ready for that book when it was presented to me in college. Only once I became a teacher and was looking for material to supplement the curriculum did I return to it and find it much more powerful than I did at age 20. And I find it even more powerful today, given the conditions in which we are existing. Some of the literal items the soldiers carried with them included things like matches, morphine, M16 rifles, M&M's candy. Figurative things they carried while serving and also when back at home include guilt, fear, anxiety, and certainly PTSD, right? Post-traumatic stress disorder. Returning to this collection now in the wake of the pandemic makes me wonder what literal things people are carrying with them now as they travel through their days. And what figurative things are they carrying? There is a group of people who believe that the aftermath of the Vietnam War, or any war for that matter, is far worse and costly than the war itself. I don't know where I fall in this because I myself have never experienced the literal battlefield. I've never been a soldier. I don't know what that is like. I have seen enough films like The Deer Hunter, films like Platoon, Apocalypse Now, films that were made about Vietnam. Certainly, I know it's more lighthearted, but Forrest Gump and the scenes in that. War is ugly. War is divisional by nature. It's about an enemy. It's about fighting evil or perceived evil. And those who are left behind are left to carry their own set of things. I think about my grandmother, my father's mother. My dad was born right when World War II was about to take place. And his father, my grandfather, volunteered to be an army medic. My paternal grandfather was a doctor, and he saw it, as did many men of his generation, as his duty to serve. And so he volunteered. He was deployed. He was in the South Pacific for 3.5 years and left my grandmother with 2 very young children, my father and my aunt. And she never knew if he was coming home. So the things that she carried as a mother, as a potential war widow, they wrote letters to each other, and those letters have been carried forward. They exist in a box in my parents' home. I happened to see that box not that long ago when I was visiting. And there it is, 3.5 years. They wrote to each other every single day. And so those stories, those letters, those insights, that love has been carried forward by my father, their eldest child, and eventually to me and my brother and my children and his children. These stories that we carry are powerful and feel extremely real. What lessons will we learn from what's been happening since March of 2020? How will those lessons, those things we carry, shape decisions individuals make, communities make, countries make in the years to come? What will come to symbolize this time in history? Is there a meme on social media that embodies this? You think of World War II, Rosie the Riveter, you think of Vietnam, and there's that figure of Rambo, the young soldier who is buff and has a red bandana around his head and long hair and is this hell-bent on fighting to the death. There are so many things that over the years we carry forward as reminders of a time in history, of what we experienced, of the people we lost, of the people we gained. Now, if I had to answer those questions right now, some of the first things that come to mind include the kindness of specific individuals I engaged with during the early months of lockdown, and then in the later months of lockdown. New relationships were born during the pandemic for me. I will certainly carry with me the daily letters I've been writing to my future self. I will think about the decision I made to close one part of my business so I could focus on opening a new part. This podcast and all the wonderful episodes and the people who have shown up to have conversations with me, these came out of a challenging time, but I will carry them forward, making peace with the truth that not everyone I love sees the world the way I do, and that's okay. I can still love them. One physical object that I will associate with the pandemic is, and it may sound trivial, but go with me here, guys. It's the Fitbit I bought when I decided I wanted to accurately measure my step count every day as part of my bigger vision for improving my fitness routine. Because I work at the computer for the majority of my work, I am seated, or I do have a sit-to-stand desk. I'm standing, but I need to move more. And I knew that, but I didn't know exactly how much I was or wasn't moving. And the Fitbit has held me accountable. Except for when it's charging or I'm taking a shower, that thing is on my left wrist 24/7. The data it has given me has been really useful. It's been insightful, surprising, delightful in some ways, and certainly motivating. And it has definitely increased my level of self-awareness about how much I move and how much I need to remember to move, especially when I get immersed in a creative project where the time just slips away. And I look up and I realize, man, I've been sitting here for 3 hours. Where did it go? So I'm curious, what about you? How has your level of self-awareness increased as a result of current circumstances? What physical object will you carry forward? What will symbolize for you this time in our collective history that is certainly shaping us in ways we have yet to understand? I'm going to end with this excerpt from a song out of the musical Hamilton, which I have been listening to a lot lately. I want to say thank you, Lin-Manuel Miranda, for creating such an incredible work of art. The song is called History Has Its Eyes on You. Let me tell you what I wish I'd known when I was young and dreamed of glory. You have no control who lives, who dies, who tells your story. I know that we can win. I know that greatness lies in you. But remember, from here on in, history has its eyes on you. History has its eyes on you.
Let me tell you what I wish I'd known when I was young and dreamed of glory. You have no control who lives, who dies, who tells your story. I know that we can win. I know that greatness lies in you. But remember, from here on in, history has its eyes on you.
Got a great key offensive strategy you like to share? Write to us at coach@pyppodcast.com or on Twitter, use #PYP and let us know how you're running your ball into the end zone for those game-winning touchdowns.